Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 11th of July. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you a broad overview of what to expect, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in detail each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. Now this week has a supermoon in the sign of Capricorn, also known as a buck moon. But it's a bit of a misnomer, this, because the moon's actually in its most vulnerable position in its entire journey through those 28 days that it takes to go through its cycle. And because of that, I think it's important to understand that Capricornian energy, where the moon resides, is very much about the worldly realm. And we also have the potent planet of power, Pluto, not too far distant from this moon position too. But on the other side of the heavens, we have the Sun and the more quick-witted energies of Mercury. And they're asking us to think about protection, nurture, security, family issues, anything to do with our emotional needs. Now, it has become a bit of a maxim over the last 10, 15 years or so, that work-life balance. But with the advent of COVID and the amount of people working from home, has that ever been more true than now? So I think all of us could find ourselves in some quite strident conversations this week. There may be that practical, physical realm that we have to service, the demands of work and earning the money, dealing with the realities of life as it is, but how do we balance this with our more emotional needs? And there can be some very intense moments, because broadly the moon and the sun are obviously exactly opposite, but Mercury and Pluto in the mix as well means we have a very intense set of energies on this particular full moon. Now also the energies in the sign of Uranus, which has been very strong this year because of the North Node reversing into Taurus on the 18th of January. And as I predicted in the autumn of last year, a big reset around the cost of living was very likely. Now, of course, now Mars has moved into this sign, but Mars is detrimented in the sign of Taurus, and Mars is also very impatient. It wants to consume, whereas the North Node and Uranus, which come together, by the way, in an exact conjunction on the 26th of July, well, they're much more to do with, in terms of Uranus, the truth, and in terms of the North Node, karma. We could see with Mars in the mix as well, quite a lot of volatility in terms of financial markets. It could be in terms of the cost of foodstuffs or fuel. They've gone up a lot already, but I feel that the response of consumers could be a lot more angry with Mars in the mix. Fortunately, however, Uranus forges a terrific link with the position of the Sun on that full moon. And if we're prepared to, look at things afresh, even things that are a bit stuck or difficult, and be more innovative and flexible in our approach, we can still make progress. Also, Venus, the planet of relating, it forges a very stable link with Saturn in the second half of this week. And that can help us to really appreciate the friendships or the financial part of our situation which are secure. Unfortunately, however, Venus, concurrent to that influence, is squared up by Neptune in the second half of this week. So I think it's possible, with all these energies boiling around, that we may start to see the people that really understand our predicament, are supportive of it, at least, in terms of their emotional understanding of our particular individual situation. And we're going to see people who may want to avoid the reality of some harsh situations, and that could be Venus in that square with Neptune. If you do meet someone for the first time in a romantic context, if it's someone who's quite self-confident and has done well in a financial context, that could be something that actually doesn't feel so good, because the energy in the sign of Cancer is calling for a sense of understanding the importance of nurture, but there still could be some kind of big charged energy, where it's around a personal situation or the world at large. And I just think that right angle between Venus and Neptune points towards the distortion of information. So if you do meet someone for the first time and you're not quite sure about them, I really would take it slowly. But Venus and Neptune, when they are in a relationship together, can also help us to trip the light fantastic. So maybe we just want to actually have a bit of escapism and enjoy some kind of time with someone who is very mesmeric. It's just down to that personal choice. But for more stable relationships, I think Venus's angle with Saturn is one that we can all really celebrate. Now, I've stormed through the 100,000 subs mark, and I'd love to get to 101 as soon as possible. I think we're about, at the time of recording this video, up to about 100,000 and 100,200 subs. If you've subbed already, thank you so much. If you've yet to do so, I'd be greatly appreciative. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you would like to benefit from more serious astrology, if you tell me 3 pieces of personal information in terms of time, date and place of birth, I can share with you a roadmap that can guide your moves for the rest of your life, and also a 12-month forecast with 30% off with my special package. Please see the link beneath this video. No 2 charts are the same, totally based on your information, and will help you to understand some of the patterns that may have dominated in your life so far, good or bad, and help you to perhaps work on the more challenging ones, but also can give you tremendous insights to guide your moves going forwards and to seize opportunities in a much more effective way. But please stay with me now for your in-depth forecast from Aries through to Pisces. So Cancer, your week commencing the 11th of July forecast sees that supermoon in your opposite sign. So your ruler, the moon, is in the sign of Capricorn, which for you is house 7. So that's about relationships, but it's also where we set boundaries. And of course, Pluto has been in house 7 for you since 2008. And I would say there's probably been some huge changes around key relationships in your world since that time. But some of those changes may have been where you feel you've had to push back against people who've not respected you. And there could be a little bit more of a flavour of that this week. But wonderfully, the position of Uranus in house 11, very much to do with the future and where you connect with groups, or where you apply your mind to your highest principles, your future. Uranus is actually forging a really brilliant link to the Sun. So it could be that you are going to rejig in some way your approach to certain relationships, but I think it's very much with an eye on the future. And of course, Mars is now in house 11 as well, and that's a really powerful energy, which is helping you to think long term, but also helping you in some ways to do what's right for you, the individual, but also work within a collective. And that can actually be very gratifying for you. What are the challenges of this week? Well, perhaps in a relationship situation, there could be a bit of a battle of wills, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't necessarily have to be terminal, like a friendship or a business partnership or even a romantic situation. But perhaps there does need to be a frank exchange. And your pattern has in the past perhaps been to avoid conflict. Obviously the archetype for Cancer is that the crab scuttles left and right, but when really roused will race up and give a mighty nip. Now you may be tempted this week to give someone a mighty nip, and they may actually deserve it. It might not be a bad thing, but I think it's better to say how you feel, because Pluto, although it has been transforming your approach to relationships, Pluto is in some ways a hidden influence. It's not necessarily about articulating ourselves in an open way. So having the moon there it's kind of saying, even if it's the least, happy part of its journey, having the moon there, which is more sensitive, gives you an opportunity to say how you feel. So a frank exchange of views, I think, can be a good thing, but particularly with an eye on the future. But the Sun and Mercury in your sign still want you to be grappling with how you can be individual, how you can really express your ideas and talents. And if the energy you're getting back from others is not very encouraging or reinforcing in a positive way, that in itself could be something which sees you wanting to move towards a new way of doing things through that collective in the 11th house of the North Node, Uranus and Mars. And of course, that is all going to come up to the boil by the end of this month in a very powerful way. So that could see some big karma coming to you in terms of something you've wanted to see come to pass for a long time. It could finally get there towards the end of July, because once the Sun moves into its home zone of Leo, that gives you an opportunity to realize tangible benefits from the plans that you've had in motion for some time. And there is a really positive opportunity at the end of this month with the Leo new moon, to be honest, for you as well. What is challenging this week? Well, I think really, obviously Mars technically is in detriment in Taurus, but I think the lovely thing about the 11th house Mars is it's a bit like a marketing cooperative. It's saying, look, I want to be totally individual, but I don't mind collaborating to some degree with others. So when it comes to fruit and veg, a lot of it around the world is grown by individual growers, and then it's some kind of marketing cooperative, say under a brand, say Happy Day Tomatoes. They're the ones who take the tomatoes and market them outwards, but the individual businesses still retain complete control over their own way of working. They just sell their product to that intermediary. So that kind of stuff could work really well for you as this month goes on. But the challenge, I think, this week is that Venus, although it's in a very positive angle to Saturn, which means confidential discussions behind the scenes, particularly linked to a long-term financial issue, perhaps even a property matter, can bring real breakthroughs. But it is challenged in its right angle to Neptune. So Neptune and Venus, when they're in a right angle, particularly with Venus being in your 12th house, which is an area of contemplation, but can be of mistrust. It can be of endings in certain situations. In a right angle with Neptune in the 9th house, which is very much about the amplification of sensitivities. So I think around an emotional issue, maybe it's going to be about this frank discussion that I think you may need to have. It's going to be important to not be so sensitive that, I say this as someone who's extraordinarily sensitive myself, but to try to keep your foot on terra firma if something is a little bit delicate that's exchanged or someone has a point of view. Try not to let it take on a life force of its own. And also, to be honest, Venus is also in quincunx with Pluto, so there could be a very unexpected revelation this week, and it may be around a relationship, and it could be that you're going to surprise someone with this revelation, but someone could surprise you. Just depends all on everyone's individual circumstances. But I think this is a great time for you investing in what makes you individual, planning for the long term, having confidence in your ability to network and connect with others successfully. But just be aware that if there is a challenge to your way of doing things, to try not to retreat and try to meet that challenge halfway and have a discussion about it, because that could be really transforming in such a hugely positive way.